Splinter Cell. Now that's a name we haven't heard in a while. Splinter Cell Blacklist was the last game in the series to be released, and that was over 7 years ago. It's strange to see such a big IP be seemingly untouched for that long, yet here we are. Ubisoft rarely lets their big IPs just die out. I mean, we've seen annual releases of Assassin's Creed since 2007, save a few years, and other franchises like Ghost Recon or Far Cry are still continually pumped out frequently. So why didn't Ubisoft do this with Splinter Cell? It was a big name, it was a popular series for over 10 years with 6 mainline entries. It seems primed to receive new releases. So why stop? Well, to answer that question, we need to take a look back at what kind of game Splinter Cell is, and then discuss the kinds of games Ubisoft has released over the last 8 years. Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell made its first appearance all the way back in 2002. Inspired by the Metal Gear Solid series, Splinter Cell was a single-player stealth shooter. The protagonist, Sam Fisher, is a highly skilled Black Ops agent for the NSA who is tasked with various top-secret stealth missions. Generally speaking, the game was received very positively across the board and was regarded as one of the best stealth games released at the time, both improving on Metal Gear Solid's graphics and gameplay. The success of the first game went on to spawn several sequels. Pandora Tomorrow, releasing in 2004, made a few notable changes, such as adding game AI that would adjust to the player's skill level, and the addition of a multiplayer mode, Spies vs. Mercs. Even today, the multiplayer in Pandora Tomorrow is widely regarded as one of the best multiplayer experiences out there. A year later, Chaos Theory was released, which continued Sam Fisher's story and added various improvements to level design and player features, as well as a cooperative mode. The game would continue the streak of positive reception and is still the highest rated game in the series today. The momentum continued right into the next year with 2006's release of Splinter Cell Double Agent that added things like moral dilemmas to the storyline and multiple endings. It also added a hub world to navigate in between missions. The overall gameplay felt very similar to Chaos Theory but wasn't quite as popular. But some opinions will differ based on the version that was played. Double Agent was released on 2 separate console generations, and most of the hardcore fans regard the original Xbox and PS2 versions as superior to their Xbox 360 and PS3 counterparts. Now this is about the time that Splinter Cell took a little bit of a break from its annual releases. Another sequel, Conviction, was supposed to be released in fall 2007, but would eventually see a series of delays and reworks over the years, and would be pushed back until 2010. The Conviction of 2007 looked drastically different from the final product in 2010, which was probably for the best. 2007 Conviction took a very different direction that many people were confused by, and personally reminds me a lot of Watch Dogs. And I wouldn't be surprised if they actually used this concept for Watch Dogs. After its release, Conviction went on to be regarded as one of the weaker titles in the series and was criticized for its shorter length and dumbing down of its stealth mechanics for a more action-focused take. It would be 3 more years before we saw the final game in the series, Splinter Cell Blacklist. One of Blacklist's biggest changes was to its voice actor. For the last 5 entries, Michael Ironside voiced the main character Sam Fisher, and this year Blacklist would feature a brand new voice actor, which wasn't received very well by fans. But beyond that, the game's campaign and stealth gameplay was generally positive. Most Splinter Cell diehards don't regard Blacklist too high on their lists, but generally speaking, it was a good single-player stealth title that had a lot to offer. Now these games were obviously linear experiences with the classic video game mission structure where you select missions rather than navigate to them in an open world. This format used to be so common before the days where every game had to be an open world game. And this is ultimately the reason why I believe Ubisoft hasn't bothered to create a Splinter Cell game in the last 8 years. I don't think they figured out a way to make it an open world game without ruining the integrity or the spirit of what the franchise is. I mean, think of Ubisoft's recent track record over the last 8 years. Far Cry, Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed, The Division, Ghost Recon, all these games are open world, and they get bigger and more bloated every single year. The days where Ubisoft would make single-player stealth or narrative-driven games are probably behind us. It seems like they think every game has to be an open world, and it has to be bigger. And I think it's fair to make the argument that Assassin's Creed has lost a lot of its integrity for this very reason as well. What started out as a small-scale open-world game focused on narrative and stealth gameplay has become an overly stuffed, massive game with more focus on an expansive open world rather than great characters or the narrative and stealth mechanics. And speaking very honestly, I'm not sure if I like the idea of Ubisoft trying to make another Splinter Cell game and fear that it may fall down a similar path. That being said, there have been a lot of talks and possible confirmation that a new Splinter Cell game is in the works. Luca Ward, who is an Italian voice actor for Sam Fisher, said in an interview last year that the game was delayed from 2020 and that he is sure Splinter Cell will return. Pair what he said with the various teases from Ubisoft, it's likely we will see its return eventually. I can't say I don't want to see the franchise return because I do, but if it does, I'd really prefer it not to be open world and still keep the original style intact. But let me know what you guys think. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you all in the next one.